Hey everyone, so this is Sam from the future. I actually just finished getting the entirety of the video you're about to watch edited and ready this morning and realized I hadn't really made my conclusion super clear, which is fine. I want you to be able to draw your own conclusions by seeing the actual results. But the video got really long. It took me hours and hours to film because I was literally timing from the moment I exported the images for editing to when I get the images back to when they're actually rendered in Lightroom, ready for any type of manual adjustments. That took about 30 minutes per app. Imagen was clearly faster. And that just segues right into my conclusion that Imagen isn't only faster, even though it requires stepping out to a third-party app, the results are way more consistent and predictable. And when things are particularly tricky in multicolored light scenarios, it splits the difference almost every time in a way that I prefer. If it's making any trade-offs, which all of these apps do when they get confused, it's making trade-offs in a way that I think looks way better. So that's where I'm at right now. This video, again, got quite long. I apologize, but I just wanted to front load this with, I'm still using Imagen. They are my definite preference. It is a really long video, so if you just want to put it on the background, I talk about a lot. I basically go through the beginning and end process for each of these apps, and then show you all the results with all three of them back to back across an entire wedding. So even though this is for patrons only, if you are watching this directly on YouTube, you can click in, get the unlisted video access, and shuffle around using time-coded bookmarks to jump ahead or wherever you want to go. So hope you enjoy it. Let me know if you have any feedback or questions, and I will be back very soon. Bye. So I just spent a good chunk of my morning leading on a scammer, somebody who, by the way, this has nothing to do with this video. I'm just venting for a second. It's just a person preying on wedding photographers. I knew within the first few hours that it was an obvious scam just based on the format and writing of the emails, but this person went so far as to sign a contract with me and make up a wedding venue who I called to verify before I went crazy on this person in rage and anger for not only signing my contract, but paying a deposit with a fraudulent check. About 20 years ago, my mom was taken by a scammer on Craigslist who's buying her car. They overpaid the shipping amount and asked my mom to wire them the difference of like $5,000 or whatever. Their check cleared for about 6 weeks. My mom called the bank many times and they said, if it's cleared, the money's in there, it's okay, blah, blah, blah. This is a well-known scam now, but it's amazing to me that they are taking so much time, these scammers, these fucking asshole scum of the earth type of people that should rot in prison. I'm losing my train of thought. I'm done with this. Okay, this video, it's gonna be a little tedious, but it's time to sit down and see how this plays out. One too many people ask me about editing. There's a lot of new companies in the AI editing space. Obviously, I have used Imagen because they were the first. I've been using them the longest, but I've tried them all. But I haven't done a straight up, this is a full wedding edited by one company. This is a full wedding edited by another. And I did share on my Patreon stories this little thumbnail. I was dealing with a wedding in a particularly tricky venue. Really, really, really confusing light across the board. It was just a mix of LEDs and daylight and just tough. And the output of this one image that doesn't even matter, it's just a random candid moment, was really telling to me about how these different systems are built with completely different data sets. They call themselves AI, but it's really just like advanced machine learning. Maybe eventually, somehow, I don't know what the back ends of these systems look like at all, but I conceptually know it pretty well. Maybe somehow AI will actually, as they get edits back from people and everything, like start to improve itself. But the fact is, these are all essentially hand-coded labeling and tweaks into how these edits are made, which means the models are going to vary. Now, some of these systems like have their own backend, and you can just dive right in without having to do any work. So there's a new one called Impossible Things that operates that way. And then others, you have to send a couple of pre-edits of like certain sections of the day that the model can then look at and try and recreate. And then others, you send 3,000 raw files across a full wedding or a couple of weddings, and they build a profile from there, mixing it in with their master model, I guess, something like that. So there's a lot of degrees where things can get a little confusing, for one, really hard to test, for two, and yeah, I'm just gonna do my best to knock it out here. I'm gonna be testing Impossible Things, which is a brand new one that's, you have to keep in mind, it's not fully released to the public. It's still in like an early release phase, so you might extend it some grace with that knowledge. The second one is Aftershoot Edits, who just had a giant little bout of marketing due to the fact that they let people lock in a forever rate. Which is interesting because the cost of things or the simplicity of things can be a little deceptive. I'm not saying that at all that's what's happening here, but I just want to now do this test to make sure that, oh, I got this lifetime rate of unlimited edits for a certain, like $400. Are you gonna force yourself to use that even though it's actually worse in results and not saving you time the way something else would? Yeah, I think a lot of people would. I think people fall for that all the time. I still use a CRM called ShootQ that did a lifetime buyout. It was $1,600 up front and you'd never have to pay for it again. Previously it was $60 a month. So I did the math and I was like, I think I'm gonna be doing this long enough that I'm gonna stick with that. They used all that money to fund their second generation of the system, which isn't actually quite as good as the first generation, but it does look nicer. It's a little more modern. And there are better solutions now. Honeybook, Ninja Studio, there's all sorts of better solutions, and I refuse to move because this does a good enough job, and I've already paid that money, and I know I'm not having to pay in the future. But with editing, I think that's a different story. Editing has the cost of real time that adds up significantly. Just because my CRM doesn't perfectly sync to my Google Calendar the way that I want. I'm losing like half seconds, a few seconds of time here, but with editing, it's totally different because these things add up and add up forever if they don't work well. To a significant amount, to a point that it truly matters. So we're gonna dive in. I don't wanna talk about this anymore. I will say one thing nobody ever talks about, that I've come across. When you've been in this industry long enough, photographers are very entrepreneurial. You start to see a lot of people kind of burn out from the love and craft of actually shooting weddings and kind of pivot using their industry knowledge in the wedding photography space into another entrepreneurial idea, like preset related things or blogging software or whatever, which is amazing. That is so cool to see that people can take the skills they've learned and the connections they've made and turn it into an entirely different business. I've never wanted to do that. I'm still squarely in the craftsman phase of my career where I just love everything to do with photography. I really don't even like making videos that much, but I appreciate the exercise it forces me to self-reflect and do things like this that I otherwise may not really do and take the time with. Gonna stop getting on tangents. Let's dive right in. We're gonna start with aftershoot. So what I've done, this most recent wedding, it's about 800 something photos, 877. I have created separate catalogs for each service we're gonna try, and each catalog has the exact same collection of photos. Aftershoot does local computer processing, so there's a trade-off with that. Yes, you don't need an internet connection, but you do need a powerful enough machine to keep up with the edits. If you have a slower machine, Aftershoot's gonna run more slowly. Faster machine's gonna run more faster. The other two options, Imagen and Impossible Things, are both server-side processing. So you don't need a powerful machine at all. You just need an internet connection. So there are trade-offs to think about. Might look really great and like the way to go in one way, may not actually be that. The other thing that's appealing about a server-side approach is they have essentially a central repository of where they can make massive, fast iterative changes that get deployed to everybody without you even having to do anything. Maybe just update the app occasionally, and it's a really small update. Aftershoot can still iterate and make changes, but it's much, much, much more important that your computer is super powerful and you've got the latest version of their third-party app. So this is the wedding. I made another video specifically demoing Imagen with this wedding, and that's for everybody. That's not just for patrons, unlike this one. I want to mention another thing. Being in this business a while, those entrepreneurs that go in to start other jobs, I know them well. I know most of the people involved with all of these apps from like their formative years, and it gets a little awkward for me to critique anybody because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I have friends, I have relationships that I've made, and at the end of the day, I'm so grateful to have a private space like Patreon to share my honest thoughts, because I never want you to think that I'm being like influenced by having a friend that has a company or like some place has paid me to do something. None of these three people have paid me anything to do this test right now. But it's awkward because I wish I could be a little more public with doing shootouts like this. Maybe I will eventually. At the end of the day, if you notice me going quiet on one service and not quiet on another, you probably know where I've switched. And if I have switched, it's because it is definitely the better option that I'm actually using and works for me in my business. So anyway, all right, here's the wedding. This actually has all of the Imagen edits still applied from the public video I did, which isn't gonna matter because when you send it over to any of the other systems, it starts everything out from scratch. It zeroes out everything and then edits on top of that. Aftershoot. Okay, so there's the catalog. I'm gonna close. I really hate having to exit Lightroom to open catalogs. That's one big downside to both Aftershoot and Imagen. You have to exit the catalog, which is super annoying. I have a slight workaround for that where I export whatever this collection of photos is as a temporary catalog on my desktop. That doesn't take long at all. It's a little clunky, but that does save me the step of having to close Lightroom. All right, so choose from recent. Aftershoot, good. Add one catalog. Pretty easy, straightforward interface here. I have noticed, maybe it's because I use my own custom 3D like LUT embedded in a camera calibration profile, but when I choose my, I think I sent them 5,000, maybe 3,000 raw files to build this initial AI profile. It detects my custom camera calibration color profile, but for some reason it is bugging out and saying it can't find it. So that's kind of annoying, and that's not a me problem, that's a them problem. But depth X works, but that's kind of weird. It's just a weird bug. I'm just gonna go with Adobe Standard. I'm gonna go ahead and do their straightening and hit continue. Select all images, number of photos. Here we go. All right, I'm gonna set a timer for each of these, by the way, because I think there's also the tendency to maybe believe that something done locally is gonna be faster. I don't know, I have never actually timed each of these back to back, so we're gonna find out. Start, cool. And my computer is not fully charged, but it's 31%, so it's not doing any artificial throttling to try and save battery power. So it's 870 raw photos, no JPEGs or anything like that, all from the same camera, or close enough. It's the R6 Mark II and the R3. I still use Aftershoot for culling, by the way. And I'll say one of the most annoying things I wish that they would fix, I don't know how they can, it's probably a really tough problem, is the time estimations. They always say, like, it's gonna take 8 minutes, and 30 minutes later, it's still churning away. And it's almost like they try and time each step individually, which is not helpful at all. Like, I wanna know how long it's actually gonna take. Like here, the processing of images, it's constantly saying something around 30 seconds remaining, which is hilarious because it's step one of who knows how many. It's not actually doing any edits. Here we go. Now they're waking magically. Like, there's no global time track, and just showing you like, yeah, it's gonna take 30 seconds or 3 minutes, and always saying it's gonna take about 3 minutes, 20 minutes later, gets a little old. It creates an initial really good first impression. Not gonna lie, makes a good first impression. You do this more than 3 or 4 times and you start to realize like, oh, okay, this is like per step, not a helpful metric. It's kind of like how all these companies, or at least Aftershoot and Imagen, both tell you how much time they've saved you editing. And it's like, okay, even if they were somehow accurate with that, which they can't be because everybody edits at a different rate. It's meaningless after they say that they've saved you like 7 months of your entire life back. It's like, okay, yeah, after the first month that you saved me, for sure, it's meaningless. Like, get rid of that visual clutter in the app and put something useful there, please. Okay, so it's saying now 6 minutes. It does seem like it's actually doing the actual edits. Big advantage aftershoot, you don't need an internet connection. Usually. I have had, and I don't know if it's because they were in their alpha stage, I have had, I pulled it up on an airplane. I was like, okay, the airplane Wi-Fi is too slow or not even available. No problem. This is great. I can bop, bop, bop. And I don't know, maybe it was a bug, but it was not able to edit. It would let me call, but it did not let me edit for some reason. I think that was back in an earlier stage, by the way. Okay, we're at about 2.5 minutes. Let's take a look at the stats of my machine. So you can see it's doing like a ton of different threads, all pushing 180, 60, 150%. So it's really, really hitting my computer hard. So if you don't have, I'm not sure what components are really critical in something like this, if it's more processor or graphics, GPU power, I really don't know. Looks like, this is a great app, by the way, iStatistica Pro. It looks like a mix. Looks like it's mostly hitting just whatever processor, but I don't keep up with how things are mapped from GPU to CPU stuff anymore. This is a pretty powerful machine, by the way. This is about the best you can get. Apple M1 Max. I guess they just released the M2 chips recently, but this computer is more than fast enough for me. It cost me about $6,500, so I'm gonna see this one through another year or two instead of trying to do the yearly update that Apple would probably prefer. All right, so we're about 4 minutes on the timer, and this is saying 4.5 minutes left. So as a good measure of whether or not at this stage, where it's actually doing the editing, if this is a good time estimate, which would be nice to know, this should be done when this timer gets to be about 8.5 to 9 minutes at the very most. If not, then you know the timer in this app at this stage is not accurate, so it can't be trusted. Which is not a big deal. I usually go off and like do something else, or I would love to be able to do this like as soon as I import everything all in one button. I'm worried these third-party apps, both the Imagen and aftershoot interfaces, my dream is to have something that backs up, renders previews in Lightroom with my preset applied, edits and culls. And if you don't have to pay per edit, I would actually like it to edit every single photo, then cull, and then I would just tighten up the cull. That is actually the workflow dream. And be able to do all of that without having to do anything other than say, import, and then go to bed. And you wake up, every image, not just the culled ones, are edited, AI culled, I can tighten up the cull, tighten up the editing. That is the way it would go. And actually, I would think for a lot of the machine learning culling stuff on the back end, it would be easier for their apps, all of them, to cull if images were pre-edited with bright enough exposure and all that. So just something to think about as the final dream. And with these third-party apps, I don't know how they can ever render previews in the way that Lightroom would need. I think that would have to be done within Lightroom. So that's kind of annoying. Okay, so 99%, ooh, done, good, okay. So it does seem when it's doing the bulk of the editing, the time estimate that it gives you is very accurate. So that's great, good to know. All right, review in Lightroom, boop. Auto opens Lightroom, that's wonderful. So that took all in 8.5 minutes. Now I'm gonna take the amount of time it takes to render everything. That should be the same for all of these. I don't think you gain anything by having something pre-rendered when it has to render again. Oh, do I really want to wait? No, I think it's important to let this test go because Impossible Things does everything within Lightroom without having to go to a third-party app. And I think part of their time built in is the rendering of stuff. So I think that would be an important thing to just see through. This is probably going to take another 10 minutes, but the timer's going. So by the end of everything built with previews, this timer will have the entire time it took from editing to everything rendered and me ready to start manually tweaking stuff and reviewing everything. So that's beginning to end, all the heavy lifting. 28 minutes to do the full re-render of all the previews after getting the edits back from aftershoot. 28 minutes, so that's all in. Before we review the whole wedding and results, I'm gonna go ahead and run the other two. That way, as we review things, I can kind of toggle back and forth between the catalogs and hopefully get a pretty nice sense of what is doing what. So let's jump into my Impossible Things catalog. Impossible Things is different. Newest company, insanely interesting workflow in that there's no third-party app. It runs itself as a plugin in Lightroom, which is awesome because you never have to leave Lightroom. That's the dream. Now, I don't know if that limits their ability to do certain features or not, and how and where it might. They don't have culling yet, but that's just because they're a brand new company. They simply have editing. I hope that they will be able to cull. So again, this is a duplicate of the exact same set of photos. Because I did an Imagen video separate from this, all the edits you see right here are the Imagen output. I'm gonna do that again and time Imagen, just like I timed aftershoot, and I'm about to time Impossible Things. But let's see how this does. So Impossible Things, all you need is to have the plugin installed, be in library mode. You can select one image, you can select 4, you hopefully can select 870. You just go to File, Plugin, Extras, and here are the Impossible Things options. You can do edit photos, which brings up all of your presets that you can choose which one you want to edit from. Custom tuning, which lets you do relative offsets. So I'm going to start with custom tuning. I'm going to make sure it's totally off. I'm going to start by making sure custom tuning is totally off. I do want 100% intelligence. That's just the difference between if you're at 0 intelligence, the only settings it's going to change are exposure and white balance. If you're at 100 or anywhere in between here, it's going to try and detect what kind of image like you're intentionally going for, a silhouette or something like that, light and airy, and adjust everything. Here you can make offsets if it's consistently trying to do something else and you need it to not. You can make offsets. Auto-tune's cool. I'm not going to play with that right now because I want to see how closely this runs out of the box. What this does is you select 25 images where you've done your tweaks. So you select 25 images, you run and edit through Impossible Things, then you re-edit them manually, and it will auto-tune based on those edits. Problem is, I don't want to test this here because it's probably still in early phase. Again, this isn't actually even released to the public yet, like the whole app, as far as I know. Problem is, when I would select 25 images, do an auto-tune, it would be a certain section of the day that it then edited perfectly, but now in a completely different light scenario, it would be offset by the wrong amount again. So it's like I was chasing my own tail with what I wanted it to offset and how much. So I'm gonna leave that be for now. Everything's zeroed out. Let's just see how it runs out of the box. So that's the custom tuning section, account login. So here under edit photos, depending on if you're a subscriber to them or you just pay as you go, you may not see all of your presets in a folder. I do have a subscription to them, so I see all my presets. Right here, they have built in the ability to do adaptive stuff I usually keep off, and then retouching portrait and enhance subject, which I think is similar to Imagen's subject masking where it like pops them. Both of those are built right in, which is really cool. I also like the super easy account credit monitoring right here. I'm gonna leave all this off just for the sake of a fair speed comparison to everything else. And I'm gonna go ahead and start the timer. Proceed. It's not perfectly accurate timer, but it's close enough. Fully rendered, from edit to fully rendered was about 28 minutes with aftershoot. Impossible Things, it's kind of cool. I don't want to scroll around too much because I don't want to take up computer resources and maybe slow things down, but it does everything embedded in the app here, and you will start to see everything get zeroed out as it does its conversion behind the scenes. You don't even see on your desktop down here anywhere where it actually does the DNG conversion, which is kind of cool. It's all up here in the embedded progress bar. It's already starting to get edits back from the cloud right here. All these edits that you see, it's already starting to render everything all in one go, which is an amazingly fast workflow thing. Super impressive. I don't think I'm gonna have to say, select all, render standard previews. It's just part of the workflow in Impossible Things. So I'm just scrolling as it goes. Problem is, and again, I don't know what to compare this to because we're not looking at the results yet, and I'm gonna stop scrolling because I don't wanna be unfair. A lot of these are a little bit warm and a little bit overexposed. Yeah, we'll see where it ends up. So timer's going. It says here it's on about number 190 for the editing, and we're only about a minute and a half in. So that's a very impressive result. But it says it's processing 2 of 6. I don't know what that means. I'm guessing it has to, if you select multiple hundreds or 1,000 images, it probably chunks it up into different partitions. I don't really know what 2 of 6 means, so we'll see. I'm pretty sure the top bar here is the global progress bar. And if that's true, and it's about halfway at just 2 minutes, this is a much, much faster app than what Aftershoot was. But are the results any better? Okay, so we're at about 4.5 minutes in. The exporting task has completed. So that, I'm pretty sure, is when it's taking the full res smart previews, which are about 2,500 pixels wide, and compressing them down to something very, very tiny so that it can send to Impossible Things servers. The upload on that, the upload to their servers is almost done. It's at 766, and there's only 870 total. So at about 5 minutes, this, as far as speed goes, is really fast. It still says processing 2 of 6 though. So I'm kind of curious what 3, 4, and 5, and 6 of 6, what that actually means. It's interesting, Aftershoot actually drained my battery when plugged in over USB-C. Same 100-watt charger, but with the USB-C cable, Aftershoot was such a resource hog on my machine that the battery couldn't keep up with charging. So I switched to the MagSafe charger, which is much faster, and my battery is restoring. That probably did impact the speed of Impossible Things a bit, but clearly it's so much faster anyway, I don't think we need to worry about it too much. Generally, if you're not aware, once you hit about 9-10% battery on your MacBook, performance starts to get artificially throttled as Apple tries to, keep your computer alive as long as possible. It will steal resources in hidden ways that are hard to predict. Oh my God, this is so tedious, just waiting for previews to finish. We're at 865, 870, 10 minutes, 25 seconds-ish. This is so boring. But incredibly, everything, are previews rendered? Are these the impossible edits? Ooh, I don't think they are. They're not. So that's interesting. Maybe it was just because I was on that page. All right, we're gonna, I'm gonna have to keep all of those selected, go to library, go to previews, and rebuild standard size previews. That's a huge bummer. It looked like it was doing that for the first whole little section here. These came back and they were rendered. I don't know why past this point here. It looks like the edits came back, but the previews, the previews didn't render in library mode, which is ultra important. You don't want to get your edits back and have to, wait a second. Yeah, you don't want to have to wait for crap to render again. That's too bad. All right, so I'm guessing this will take about the same amount of speed as it took Aftershoot. So I'm gonna be sitting here for another 15, 20 minutes, and I'm guessing the workflow, the overall time is gonna be close to 30 minutes, just like with Aftershoot. That's what I'm guessing. Okay, again, this took so long I had to stop my recording and start it again because it's just filling up my giant memory cards. We're at about 25 minutes. Looks like it's got about 20 left to go. So I think it's, within 3-minute range of exactly from when you get the edits back to everything being rendered, you can dive right in with full Lightroom performance and speed. It's about the same amount of time. That's a bummer. I was thinking Impossible Things, unless there's a bug in the software, was rendering as it was re-downloading the results. But I think it was just doing that with what was close to on my screen visually. Oh well. So yep, okay, 25 minutes, so a little bit faster, saved about 3. We're gonna wait and review everything in a bit. I'm gonna open up the final catalog for Imagen. I'm gonna close aftershoot so it's not using any resources whatsoever. Okay, so Imagen also has a third-party app, just like aftershoot. Totally different than Impossible Things. It works really, really similar to aftershoot, and it also has culling, which I'm not gonna get into right now for any app. Personally, right now, I still use aftershoot for culling. The app is fine. You definitely need an internet connection. So each of these systems, like one, you don't need an app, but you do need internet. One, you do need an app and you don't need internet, and one, you need an app and you need internet. So everything just has like so many weird trade-offs across the board. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and create a new project. I'm gonna close this catalog, edit photos, recent catalog, good, test versus test. Can I name it that? Choosing my profile, I'm going to apply straightening, 870 images. Now once you hit add, it doesn't start, it just puts it to your projects list, so you can upload multiple projects at once, which is nice. And now we start the timer. Okay, so imagine it's taking the high-res smart previews, compressing them down. You do actually see the DNG conversion happening down here, which is kind of not the prettiest thing ever. I wish that could go away. But they say an estimated 4 or 5 minutes, which would be pretty fast. Then we wait for a notification email. So server-side stuff, they say they edit them at about 0.33 seconds per image before they send you an email to notify that everything is ready. So after that, I'm gonna import it into Lightroom, keep the timer going for previews to render, and see where we land in terms of overall time to get the edits back, and then we'll review bit by bit every single result. One thing that just popped into my head that I think is worth discussing as we wait and see if Imagen's upload timer is accurate. I think there's the presumption that just because an app exists, that it's always going to get better. And I don't think that that's necessarily true at all. I have been using Imagen and have been happy with the improved results. They are the first player in this AI editing space. So you might think, oh, they've been around the longest, they must do the best job, but that is absolutely not true. There's a technical debt that people pay when they decide to build a platform or a system of doing these things that a lot of times, if the industry shifts or there's a new way of doing things that's discovered, they're already so heavily invested in an earlier decision that locks them into a result that they can't get out of anymore, or they can't embrace without kind of scrapping everything and starting from the ground up. So keep in mind that the newest thing might actually be the best, and what you currently use might not actually get better, and what's been around the longest may not actually get any better. There's the temptation, again, to look at ease and cost, overall cost, and say, well, okay, I'll pay the money now for a lifetime subscription to aftershoot because they offered that. They're definitely going to get better over time. So if it's close enough now, they'll get better. Not necessarily. I mean, they might. I really hope they do, and I would certainly use them for all my editing if the results here show that they're better. But you can look at many other services, especially AI content generation, where they have version updates that do change, but definitely not always for the better. It's subjective. Aftershoot themselves deals with a lot of culling updates, because that's what they've been around doing the most, is culling updates, where they issue an update and they think that it's better, but it actually makes everything worse. Then they have to roll the whole app back. One thing I would love to see each of these players make is a very clear name or number that is associated not with just the app or the plugin version, but with the version of the AI that you are currently using. Because right now it's completely black box as to what version you might be on. You have to trust that they're not making things worse unintentionally, or that you're not now using a bug of some kind that starts to work against you. So that's one huge feature I'm gonna ask all these people if they bother to listen. to make is, hey, let me know if I'm on version 3 and you've updated your end to be version 4, because I was fine at version 3. It doesn't need to get better. Results are perfectly fine. That is how I've been with my Bit Crusher profile on Imagen. My very first one, I fine-tuned it once and I've been happy with it ever since. I don't want anything different right now. I will play maybe once a year to see if I can recreate something better, but it doesn't always need to happen. My workflow is fast enough right where it's at. Okay, we're at about 6, 7. Yeah, so we're 4 minutes, 40 seconds, and boom. So their timer is definitely accurate for the uploading of the project to their servers. So now it's a waiting game, timer's still going. We're gonna see how long it takes to get the edit notification back. Imagen sends an email, and it also changes this here in the app. So I'm just gonna keep both up. The app, maybe they fixed this, but it was a little buggy where if you left this open, that edit would just spin forever. It wouldn't say download review. You would have to be clicked out somewhere else and then click back in for that to happen. So I'm worried that's still the case, I don't know. And I don't wanna get the email, have the timer going and not realize that it came a minute earlier. This is why I'm hopeful they can make some sort of sound or system-wide notification to let you know your edits are ready for download. But let's do the math. They said 0.33, so it's 0.33 seconds per image. So that's a total of 287 seconds. We divide that by 60 seconds per minute. Should take about 4.785 minutes. I forget exactly when I started. I want to say 4:40. So right around 8 minutes is when I can expect, 8 to 9, the notification. It would be really nice if they could embed a timer progress bar on this part of the app. I don't know why they haven't done that. So that would be really useful. Okay, so just got the email. Yeah, edits are ready, and it's been 9 minutes. The app does still have that bug, so I would have had to click out and click back in to see it. That's kind of annoying. Maybe it comes like after a minute or something, but just for the sake of fairness, yeah, that needs to be tweaked up. But they did send an email. All right, so that was not too bad. That was right about what they calculated. Download to review, so this is gonna download. Now at this stage, all the edits are text-based information. It doesn't have to re-download any raw files of any kind. So this should go pretty quick. I'm gonna keep that going on the timer. Okay, yeah, that's like seconds. That hardly even matters. Let's open Lightroom Catalog, and then we will resume the timer for all the rendering of previews, which is probably gonna be exactly the same as the other two and take about 15, 20 minutes. Okay, rendering previews, go. 870 images, Okay, some snacks. Edits for full previews came back at 15 minutes, 30 seconds. So that's notably faster by a lot. It re-edited every single image. So that's an impressive overall, like, let me double check everything's ready. Yeah, develop mode's super fast. Library mode, super fast. So I'm just looking at the numbers, 15:48, and I accidentally was like 15 seconds late because I was unpacking my snacks here. Wow, okay, well, let's look at the results. What I'm gonna do, since I can only have one Lightroom catalog open at a time, I'm gonna import all of these into one giant catalog and create a little collection for each. So this is gonna be, I'm gonna make virtual copies, because if I'm importing the same photos from other catalogs into here, I'm gonna need these as a virtual copy to retain the edits from each respective service. This is a video that has been incredibly tedious and taken a lot longer than I thought it would. I don't know how many hours I've been doing this, but the sun is now starting to traverse the background. We are in the home stretch. All previews are rendered, timing set for both. Imagen definitely won out in that. The catalog that I have in front of me, although it says Imagen AI, now has aftershoot, Imagen, and impossible things in that order, all sequentially added. So aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Now aftershoot and Imagen both have AI straightening applied, which is much, much, much better, at least from Imagen's results that I've seen so far. I haven't compared yet. I've just used it since they've had the feature, which has been like since launch. Way better straightening than what Adobe does with auto straightening. So I kept that turned on for aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. So let's just jump around. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Impossible Things, a little too bright, a little too warm. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. A little too bright, a little too warm. That looks fine. That looks fine. Little bright maybe. Let's jump to some areas where we've got mixed lighting and humans, where we will all be most sensitive to. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. So Impossible Things took a more neutral approach here. Imagine warm and a more aggressive straighten that I think I prefer. I don't know. Aftershoot is sort of a toss-up in terms of the edit difference. That looks a little less warm. I think I like the warmth of Imagine. Okay, let's go to these shoes. This might be a little tricky. So this is Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things, way too bright. I think I like Aftershoot's edit here slightly more, just with the shadow detail. Here's something they all looked a little different and confused on. I'm going to say Imagine straightening did better here, and Impossible Things, too bright, too warm. The edit is a toss-up between Aftershoot and Imagine. Here's something. So this is Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Way too bright. I like the color of Impossible Things. This is too warm. This is Aftershoot. Imagine is throttling sort of the difference between them. Although this is too bright, so I'm gonna have to tinker with it. This, I think, has more reasonable exposure value and a good balance of color, even though I like this slightly purpley blue. Yeah, I like Imagine on that overall. Let's see, let's go to something, okay, here's one where it definitely changes a lot. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. So I like Aftershoot's too blue, Imagine it's warm, but I like it more. Impossible Things, too bright, too cool. Here's one, that looks great, that's Aftershoot. Imagine, looks great. Impossible Things, little too desaturated and weird. So I'm definitely picking up, I like Aftershoot a little more, the brightness. Definitely picking up on a consistent Aftershoot or Imagine preference. Impossible Things, let's see. That looks pretty good. But here's the thing. In outdoor, easy, shaded light, all of these are probably going to do about the same. This is Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Looks like Aftershoot and Impossible Things pretty much nailed. I like Impossible Things the most. But this is the easiest light. I don't need that much help dialing shaded, nice sunset light or what have you in very much. I just don't. This is Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Impossible Things, too cool, good exposure. Imagine, perfect warmth, perfect exposure. Aftershoot, good color, underexposed. Okay, something more tricky with a lot of yellow in the scene. Okay, so Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Impossible Things, too warm, I like the exposure. Imagine, a little too cool, bright. Aftershoot looks okay. Let's get something different. Couple's portrait. All right, there's a lot of straightening happening. Okay, so this is Aftershoot, Imagine, and I think the straightening is better with Imagines. Impossible Things. Impossible Things, too bright, too magenta. Edit looks good on both, but the straightening is better from Imagine, for sure. This is an overcast day, so it is really consistent light at this point. Ooh. Okay, here's some big variances. Anytime you have a dominant color, like this red, pinkish, magenta wall, especially something that's like skin tone color, I find that auto white balance also in camera gets very confused. It's just a big issue. Let's see, this is Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. So Aftershoot's way too cool, magenta. The exposure's good. Imagine is great overall. I like the warmth. Could be a touch brighter maybe. And Impossible Things, pretty close. Maybe a little touch too green, but I definitely prefer the latter two. Here's another. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Let's go to this shoe shot. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Imagines I definitely prefer. Impossible Things is next best. It's a little warm. That's way too blue. So yeah, these are areas that, Impossible Things looks great. Imagine, also great, a little bright. Way too cool and magenta for Aftershoot. All right, let's go to a time of day that is a little bit where the light actually started to change. Or, we could try this green wall. Oh yeah, it really threw them for a loop. So this is Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Don't know what happened with Impossible Things. The green's throwing it off. Way too warm and weird. Imagine looks great. Aftershoot, too bright, a touch magenta. Yeah, Imagine. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. I like Impossible Things. I like Imagine. I think the best balance is the Imagine result. Oh, yeah, they are all over the place. Look at this. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Almost exact same results between these two. It's a toss-up. But we need to get in some more complicated reception lighting, low light. The blue hour is definitely going to throw it for a loop. Here's a good, okay, so this is Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. I definitely prefer Imagine. I like the direction the warmth is going with Impossible Things, but it's too much. I think that's way too cool. This is Aftershoot, and I think Imagine split the difference really nicely. Here's another one. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Impossible Things better on color still, but exposure's way off. Again, Imagine is splitting the difference in a way that I would prefer it overall if I didn't want to make any tweaks. But I do like the color on Impossible Things here. Oh gosh. All right, let's get into the reception tint, which was quite complex. Blue hour, LED lights, all that jazz. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Too warm on Aftershoot. Pretty good on Imagine. Impossible Things, I think, wins out on that. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. I prefer the Imagine straightening. Aftershoot and Imagine's editing is pretty similar. I prefer the warmth of Impossible Things. Imagine. Impossible Things I don't like at all. All right, let's get to toasts. Or maybe this, I don't know what this light source was. So Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. I prefer Imagine. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. I prefer Imagine. Consistently. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. The straightening's a little weird, but it's also a weird photo. Here's one. Lit naturally with a neon bright backlight. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. I prefer Imagine. Aftershoot's way too blue. Imagine, great straightening, good exposure. Impossible Things, great color, bad exposure. But Impossible Things nailed it here. That looks good. Still, Imagine is close enough. Aftershoot, way off. Okay, let's find a different scene. Toasts going on here. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. It's a little too green, but I like the warmth. This is more neutral. Impossible Things, way off. I think I'm gonna go with this. It's a toss-up, but I think I prefer, actually, I don't know. Now I just want to show you the results and let you decide for yourself. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Imagine definitely wins that one. Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Those are three completely different results. That's crazy. I think I prefer Imagine's though. Aftershoot's nice warmth, but it's way too warm. Okay, let's get to some bounce flash, which all of them should do pretty well on because it's a consistent light source that's not varying a bunch. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so Aftershoot, Imagine, Impossible Things. Impossible Things, nice, but too bright. A little warm on Imagen, a good balance on aftershoot. Let's find some more bounce. This looks like a good... So the straightening went a little too crazy here. I don't like how much it cropped in. That's kind of weird. Yeah, it did. But way too warm with aftershoot. Good balance on Imagen. Way too cool with impossible things. Aftershoot, Imagen. Wait. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Aftershoot, way too warm. Imagen, nice. Impossible things, too cool. So definitely picking up a theme. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Impossible things looks great there. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Yeah, it's between impossible things and Imagen. So it seems like in the trickiest places, which this is sort of maybe what I would have guessed, just given my gut instinct of using these things, over the past few months, words are stopping forming in my head now. In areas where light is straightforward and easy and predictable, like shade, they all kind of do fine. In areas where anything has to be a trade-off, Imagen consistently splits the difference between what the other two are doing in a way that I think is closer to what my end result is usually going to be. Let's see if we can find any more sort of complex. Here we go. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Too dark, nice color, nice warmth, good exposure. It's a toss-up. Maybe this is a little cool for me, but I could go either way. Here's one, LED light. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Impossible things, way too desaturated. Imagen, nice. Aftershoot, too magenta, too yellow. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. So I like the crop in. The straightening is it's straighter. Like the colors on all of them for different reasons. Again, I think Imagen splits the difference much nicer. Okay, we got a nice amount of variance between these two. Let's go in reverse order. Impossible things, Imagen, aftershoot. Impossible things, Imagen, aftershoot. Impossible things, Imagen, aftershoot. Whoa, aftershoot, really missed that. Impossible things, Imagen, aftershoot. Impossible things, Imagen, aftershoot. Impossible things, Imagen, aftershoot. Something about this is really confusing aftershoot. I don't know what, but it is. Here we go. So impossible things, Imagen, aftershoot. So yeah, Imagen still winning out here. There we go. Hopefully you're starting to see some patterns, form your own opinions. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Again, this has all my core base preset. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Again, I prefer Imagen. The straightening is excellent. Exposure, a touch brighter. For something about this time of day and this light, impossible things is getting confused. It's too bright and colors are weird. Okay, let's end on this photo. Just using a literal street light, which is normally awful for skin tones. Aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Impossible things, too bright, too warm. Aftershoot, Imagen, looks pretty good. Aftershoot, too green. Exposure's good, but way too green. Imagen splits the difference again. It's hit, okay, aftershoot, Imagen, impossible things. Exact same thing playing out. And this is where results really matter. In areas of mixed nighttime, daytime, artificial light, that is where I want to spend the least amount of time tweaking, or at least have a much higher, consistent, elevated approach. I'm going to stop talking now. This video is already way too long. I hope you found it helpful. Please let me know in the comments if you've done your own tests like this and come to any conclusions. Without seeing things back to back like this, it's kind of a gut feeling of instinct, which is where the workflow and the cost can start to influence and try and force and weigh an opinion. May not be actually the right opinion that's going to save you time. For now, I'm going to keep testing all of these back to back. As always, thank you so much for your attention. I'll be back soon. Bye, everyone.